Okay, so let's say you have a big interview coming up and, well, who isn't looking for a little edge, right? You want to really nail it. You sent us this YouTube video, Career Vids. It's called 17 Brilliant Answers to the Most Asked Interview Questions. And it has a ton of views, so clearly it's like struck a nerve with people.
Yeah, interviews can feel like a high-pressure situation for sure.
Totally.
Everyone wants to know, like, what's the secret? What's the cheat code to, to win the game, so to speak? This video really taps into that feeling, doesn't it?
For sure. And they get right to it with this whole seat method, which I kind of love.
Oh, yeah.
For tackling that dreaded tell me about yourself, question skills, education, achievements type of person. It's almost like they want you to have this little like jingle in your head, you know, on the way to the interview.
Right, easy to remember under pressure.
Yeah.
I mean, that's clever. It's a clever tactic.
Yeah, totally.
But, memorizing something is only going to get you so far. What about you? When you were going through these answers, anything really stand out to you as like, whoa, that's really strong? Or, on the flip side, did anything fall a little flat?
Yeah, there were definitely a few that felt, I don't know, maybe a little generic, like just saying you're passionate about the industry. I mean, don't get me wrong, enthusiasm is great.
Yeah.
But it's kind of a given, right? Like, you're at the interview, you probably have some interest. What I did like was their approach to the what's your greatest weakness
Yeah.
question.
Everyone's favorite.
Everyone's least favorite, I think you mean. But they suggest admitting to things, and this is smart, like getting nervous about public speaking or maybe have trouble saying no, things that could actually be framed, pretty positively if you think about it.
That's exactly it.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
much better than trying to pretend to be perfect.
Right.
It's about showing, like, hey, I'm self-aware. I want to grow. I'm not afraid to admit where I have room for improvement. I think that actually goes a long way.
I agree, totally. And they also really hammer home the importance of research, like really researching the company.
Yeah.
And they're not just talking about glancing at the website like 5 minutes before you walk in the door.
Ooh,
They're talking about like deep dive understanding their products,
right.
even like checking out their social media presence, which is smart.
I think that makes a lot of sense when you put yourself in the shoes of the person interviewing you. Like
Yeah.
if you had two candidates who, on paper, were equally qualified,
Yeah.
but one of them was clearly showing that they took that extra step to really understand what your company is about. I mean, that speaks volumes.
Totally. And it shows, you're not just there for any job, you're specifically interested in them.
Exactly.
They even gave like concrete tactics, like referencing customer reviews that you saw, or maybe mentioning a recent award the company won.
Oh, yeah, that's great. It's like that difference between just showing up for a date or actually like putting some thought into it beforehand. You know what I mean?
Okay, that's a great analogy. I'm writing that down. Speaking of trying to like cover all the bases, though, I did kind of chuckle at how the video gives multiple answers for some questions, like, when can you start? It's like they're trying to predict every possible scenario, which I guess is helpful.
I think it speaks to the fact that there's no one size fits all.
Right.
Like these are frameworks, but you have to tailor it. You have to tailor it to you. You have to tailor it to the situation.
Totally, totally. Okay, so let's talk about the elephant in the room, salary expectations. This is the one where I feel like everyone gets like a little bit nervous, right?
Oh, for sure. It's such a fine line to walk. You don't want to sell yourself short,
Yeah.
but you also don't want to price yourself out of the running.
Right. And their advice, which I thought was interesting, is to use sites like Glassdoor, do your research, see what the typical salary range is for the role, and then aim slightly below the top end.
It's a solid strategy, shows you've done your homework, you're being realistic, but you're also confident.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. One thing I did find really interesting was their emphasis on having questions ready for the interviewer at the end of the interview.
Oh, yeah.
They basically say it's a red flag if you don't have any questions.
Right. Like you just haven't been paying attention this whole time.
Yeah, exactly.
Damn on.
And I think it's a missed opportunity because this is your chance to really show you're thinking long term, you're genuinely interested. And they gave some really good examples like asking about the company culture, opportunities for growth. They even say, like, ask the interviewer about their experience at the company, which I thought was a nice test.
Oh, love that.
Because it shows that you see them as a person,
Yeah. Yeah.
not just like the gatekeeper to your, hopefully new job.
It's a conversation. That's what you want. It's not just a one-sided interrogation.
Right.
You want to make that connection.
Okay, but what about that question, that other big one that's like, why should we hire you?
Oh,
Ugh, it just feels
Oh,
so, like,
totally.
put on the spot every time.
Yeah. It's like the ultimate test of, like, how much do you back yourself?
Totally. Like, sum up your entire value proposition in, like, 60 seconds or less, go.
Right. So they emphasize showcasing your strengths, of course,
Mhm.
but like not just in a vacuum, you have to connect it back to what the company needs,
Okay.
right? So instead of just saying, I'm a great communicator, which, everybody
Everybody
clearly.
puts that on their resume.
Exactly. You'd say something like, I'm a great communicator. Maybe you give a quick example. And I know how crucial clear communication is to achieving company's mission. That's something I'm really passionate about. You see how that takes it to the next level.
Wow. Yeah, that's so good.
It's not just about you anymore. It's about them.
Yeah. And how your skills actually benefit them.
Exactly.
Okay, so they also touch on some of the more, I don't know, logistical questions, I guess, like when can you start? What are your salary expectations? Which we kind of already touched on. Was there anything about those sections that like stood out to you?
I like how with the when can you start
Mm-hmm.
question, they actually gave several different options. Because not everyone's coming from the same place, right?
Yeah,
Like some people might be able to start tomorrow, other people might need to give 2 weeks notice or a month's notice. So it's smart that they acknowledge that.
absolutely. Shows that they've actually like thought about it from the job seeker's perspective.
Yeah. And with the salary question, I think it's smart how they frame it as a conversation, not a demand. Like, know your worth, be prepared to discuss it openly, but also be realistic.
So again, like doing your research beforehand is key.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of brings us back to like the heart of what this whole video is about. It's about transforming that interview from this scary interrogation into an actual conversation.
It's about connecting with the person sitting across from you, letting your personality shine through, and really showing them who you are beyond just, what's written on that piece of paper.
Because at the end of the day, a robot can't do what you do. So don't be afraid to let that human connection shine through.
Mhm. Love that. And on that note, I think it's time for a quick break. But when we come back, we're going to dive into some more specific examples from the video and really dissect what makes them tick.
Sounds good. Let's do it.
So we're back and ready to dive into some more of these like specific examples that the video gives.
Sounds good to me.
All right, so they kick things off, with the classic tell me about yourself, and they use that SEAT framework that we talked about: skills, education, achievements, and type of person.
Makes sense. It's a good structure.
Yeah, it is. But how do you make it stand out, right? Because I feel like anyone can just like list off bullet points from their resume.
Right. You've got to bring it to life. I mean, they gave an example, I think it was, of someone talking about, their teamwork skills
Mhm.
and how they're great at meeting deadlines. And they even threw in like, oh, and once I save the company money. But it just needs a little something extra.
Yes. It's like instead of just saying, I'm a hard worker, tell me a story. Like, give me an example of a time when you went above and beyond to meet a deadline. Paint a picture, right?
Exactly. Show, don't tell.
Mm-hmm.
Like instead of just, I have a degree in X, talk about a specific skill you learned that you can directly apply to this job.
Totally. And speaking of making it relevant, they also talked about weaving in some details about the company itself, which I thought was really smart. What did you think about that advice?
Oh, it's crucial. It shows that you didn't just like, blast out a million generic applications. You actually took the time to look at their website, see what they're about.
Yeah,
Like, hey, I noticed you recently launched this product, or I was really impressed by this campaign you did.
exactly. It shows that you're paying attention. It's like that date analogy again, right? It's that difference between just showing up and actually putting some thought into it.
Exactly. Now, what about those tougher behavioral questions? Like, tell me about a time you failed.
Ugh, I feel like everyone dreads that one.
Of course. But again, it's all about how you tell the story. Like the example they gave was about someone who had a miscommunication with a coworker. Instead of dwelling on the mistake, they focused on what they learned from it, like how they improved their communication skills going forward.
So it's not just about admitting a weakness, it's about owning it and showing that you grew from that experience.
Exactly. It shows resilience. And that's huge. Companies aren't looking for perfect. They're looking for people who can learn and adapt.
And I feel like those stories are just so much more memorable.
Oh, absolutely. It's way more engaging than just a canned response.
Mm.
And it's that old thing they say, like, people might not always remember what you said, but they'll remember how you made them feel.
So true.
And a good story, a good anecdote can do that. In fact, I actually recommend having a few of these, like, go-to stories in your back pocket.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, like one about leadership,
Okay.
one about problem solving, one about overcoming a challenge. like your greatest hits. That way, no matter what they throw at you, you're ready.
I like that. A mental toolbox of interview anecdotes.
Exactly. Now, another thing they really emphasized that I thought was spot on was the importance of asking good questions at the end.
Oh, yes.
Remember, this is your chance to show them what you're really interested in. So don't just say, nope, I think I'm good.
They even said it's a red flag if you don't have any questions. Like,
What?
what? Have you not been paying attention this whole time?
Right. Come on, Alexa ask me something about the company or the team.
Right. And they gave some good examples, like asking about the company culture or opportunities for growth and development. And I also like the suggestion to even ask the interviewer about their own experience at the company.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. Shows you're interested in them as a person.
Yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
So we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about telling stories, asking thoughtful questions. But what about that other big one? That one that always makes me cringe a little bit inside. Like, why should we hire you?
Ah, yes. The $1,000,000 question.
It feels so like,
High stakes.
yes, like sum up your entire value proposition in the next like 30 seconds. Go. It's like, okay, convince me. Why you? Why not the other 100 people applying for this job?
Right, it's high pressure for sure. But they had some good advice in the video. Like, obviously, you want to highlight your strengths, but they emphasize connecting those strengths back to the company's specific needs.
Okay, so it's not just about what you're good at, it's about how those skills will actually benefit them.
Exactly. It's that subtle shift from, what can this job do for me, to, here's how I can help you achieve your goals.
Oh, that's good, because it shows you're thinking about the bigger picture, not just like clocking in and clocking out.
Right. And they also touch on those more logistical questions, like when you can start, what your salary expectations are. Anything stand out to you in those sections?
Well, I liked how they gave a few different options for that when can you start question, because not everyone's in the same boat. Like some people might be able to jump in right away, but others might have to give notice or wrap things up at their current job.
Exactly. And I think it's refreshing that they acknowledge that.
Mm.
You know, not every candidate is coming from the same place.
Totally. Okay, but what about the salary quarter? I feel like there's so much anxiety around that one.
For sure. They made a good point about framing it as a conversation, not a demand.
Okay, so not like, this is what I'm worth, take it or leave it.
Right. It's about knowing your worth, being prepared to discuss it openly, but also being realistic about what the market is for that particular role.
So again, like doing your research beforehand is key. Knowing what's reasonable, what other people in similar positions are making, that gives you a starting point.
Exactly. And, it all kind of circles back to what we've been talking about this whole time, right?
Yeah.
Turning that interview into a genuine conversation.
Yeah, it's about making that human connection, letting your personality come through and really showing them who you are beyond just a list of skills and experience. Because at the end of the day, that's what's going to make you memorable.
Absolutely. Preparation is key, of course. But it's not just about memorizing answers. It's about understanding the underlying principles, reflecting on your own experiences, and practicing your delivery so that when you walk into that interview room, you feel confident, prepared, and ready to show them what you've got.
So good. And on that note, we're going to wrap things up here. But hopefully, this deep dive has given you some food for thought and maybe even a little boost of confidence as you prepare for your next big interview.
Absolutely. Good luck out there.
And remember, you've got this.